You walked past something broken today. Maybe it was a door that doesn't quite close right, or a sound coming from the car, the one everyone else in your life has simply accepted as a new permanent feature. And without really deciding to, you noticed it, filed it somewhere in the back of your head without even meaning to. And it stayed there. That's not a habit. It's a specific kind of mind.
People who are drawn to fixing things aren't just problem solvers in the generic sense, the way everyone describes themselves on a LinkedIn profile.
What's actually happening is more particular than that. They see a system that's been interrupted, a gap between what is and what should be. And that gap produces a low-level cognitive itch that a lot of people simply don't experience, or at least not at the same intensity. It doesn't go away on its own. It sits there, humming. Your partner can walk past the same leaking tap for 4 months. You've mentally disassembled the faucet, diagnosed the likely culprit, probably the O-ring, and cross-referenced the thread size before you finished your morning coffee. And the strange part? You're not stressed about it. You're almost engaged. Researchers use the term systemizing to describe the cognitive drive to analyze, understand, and construct systems, to find the rules governing how something works. Not just mechanical systems, though that's the most visible expression of it. Any system, an engine, yes, but also the way a team at work keeps failing at the same handover point, or why a recipe that should work keeps going wrong on the third step. The fixer's brain is somewhat involuntarily mapping inputs to outputs, cause to effect, and what tends to get missed is that the broken thing itself isn't really the destination. The moment before it's fixed, when you're looking at it, turning it over in your hands, forming a hypothesis, that's where something brilliant is happening for you. Most people experience uncertainty about a broken object as mildly stressful. You experience it as rather interesting. Those are fundamentally different relationships with the unknown, and they produce quite different lives. There's a documented cognitive trait called need for cognition, the tendency to actively seek out and enjoy complex thinking. People who score high on it report higher satisfaction from the process of working something out than from simply having the answer handed to them. The diagnostic phase, the part where you're still figuring it out, produces its own quiet reward. The fix is almost a conclusion to something that was already satisfying, which does say something about how you process the world. A study, better known as the IKEA effect, found that people who build or repair something themselves consistently assign it more value than an identical item they hadn't touched. The researchers interpreted this mostly through a lens of product attachment, which is fine, but what it also points to is something about participation in a system's functioning. The hand that fixed it can't quite separate itself from the object afterward. There's a kind of authorship that happens, even with something as impersonal as a flat-pack shelf or a carburetor. That old car sitting in the garage, the one that's not worth what you'd put into it, according to everyone with an opinion, it's not sentimental attachment in the way people lazily assume. It's more that the object has become entangled with an experience of understanding something. You've been inside it. You know how it works. That's genuinely hard to walk away from. The other thing that goes unremarked is the fixer's tolerance for complexity. When something looks complicated, a significant portion of people make a quiet decision. This isn't for me. It would take too long. I wouldn't know where to begin. Fixers do something different. They lean in, not recklessly, but with a methodical patience that comes from trusting the process of figuring something out more than they trust already knowing the answer before they start. That may look like confidence from the outside, but it's more like accumulated evidence. Every repaired thing is a data point, a record of problems that once looked impossible until they weren't. They've built a track record with themselves that says, I've done this before, I didn't know the answer going in, and I came out the other side with it working. So this new thing probably isn't any different. In psychological terms, that's called mastery motivation, one of the more durable forms of drive that's been studied. And what's distinctive about it is that the external reward is almost incidental. A fixer who solves a problem in an empty garage with nobody watching gets roughly the same satisfaction as one who fixes it in front of an audience. The audience genuinely isn't the point. The system functioning again, that's the point, which is also, and I say this with full affection, why explaining exactly what you fixed to someone who did not ask, and clearly does not have the vocabulary to follow along, is apparently non-negotiable, not for their benefit. Saying it out loud just makes the experience feel finished. You know what I'm talking about. There's something worth sitting with, though. Systems are honest in a way that people sometimes aren't. A mechanical problem will tell you what's wrong if you look carefully and long enough. It has rules, logic you can follow. You can test a hypothesis, and the system will give you real feedback. People are considerably messier. The causes aren't always visible. The solutions don't always hold. And sometimes you do everything right and still come out the other side not understanding what happened. Fixers tend to bring the same methodology to relationships that they bring to objects. It mostly works until it meets something that isn't a system. And then it runs headfirst into a fundamental truth. Some things aren't broken. Some things don't have a root cause you can isolate and address. They're just part of life. That's a harder thing to hold. But what makes this particular way of moving through the world remarkable, and I mean that plainly, not as a compliment you're supposed to deflect with some self-deprecating comment about just being obsessive, is the underlying assumption it requires. The fixer's premise is that there's a reason for things being the way they are, that the reason can be found, and that once you find it, something can be better. That's actually quite an unusual thing to believe. A lot of people have stopped believing that, in ways they may not even notice anymore. You probably don't identify as an optimist. The whole orientation is too practical for that label to sit comfortably. But what is it really, to look at something broken and think, yeah, I can work with this, if not a specific kind of stubborn, evidence-based faith in the possibility that things can function better than they currently do? The next time you catch yourself instinctively reaching towards something that isn't working right, or mentally tracing a problem nobody else has registered yet, notice that. That pull toward understanding how things work, toward seeing the parts and imagining them whole again. It isn't incidental to who you are. It might be one of the more honest expressions of it.